The first time Emily Miller realized her parents would never believe her. She was 12 years old, standing in the middle of the kitchen with her hands shaking and the truth burning in her throat. A broken vase lay on the floor. Her brother, Ryan, stood beside her, calm and confident. Emily explained exactly what happened. Ryan had been playing with a ball indoors. It slipped. The vase fell. She even pointed to the ball still rolling under the table. But her mother sighed and said, "Emily, why do you always argue?" Her father looked at Ryan and said, "Go to your room, son. Emily, clean this up." That was the moment something quiet settled into Emily's heart, the understanding that facts did not matter as much as who said them. Years passed, and the pattern followed her into adulthood like a shadow. In their small Ohio town, the Millers were known as a loving, close family. Neighbors waved. Friends admired them. No one saw how Emily slowly learned to shrink herself. She learned to speak softly, to explain carefully, to never sound emotional. She thought if she stayed calm, if she stayed logical, her parents would finally listen. But calm did not win against charm, and logic never beat favoritism. Ryan grew into the role of the golden son easily. He was friendly, funny, and always sure of himself. When he succeeded, it was celebrated. When he failed, it was excused. Emily, on the other hand, became invisible in her own home. Her good grades were expected, not praised. Her mistakes were remembered longer than her achievements. If Ryan said the sky was green, her parents would look up before questioning him. By her mid-20s, Emily lived on her own and worked as a project coordinator for a marketing firm. She paid her bills, helped her parents when they needed it, and showed up to every family event with a polite smile. She told herself she was fine. She told herself she was grown, that childhood wounds shouldn't matter anymore. But every visit home reopened something old and tender. The breaking point came quietly. On a rainy Thursday evening, Emily had taken a week off work to stay at her parents' house while her father recovered from surgery. She cooked, cleaned, managed medications, and made sure everything ran smoothly. She didn't complain. She never did. That evening, her mother suddenly noticed something missing: Mark Miller's watch. It was a classic silver watch Linda had given him years ago for their anniversary. Mark wore it almost every day. The house filled with tension instantly. They searched the bedroom, the living room, the kitchen. Panic rose. Ryan came downstairs late, phone in hand, looking relaxed. When asked if he had seen the watch, he shrugged and said no. Then he paused, as if remembering something important, and said, "Emily was in Dad's study earlier. Maybe she moved it." The words hit Emily like cold water. She explained calmly. She had gone into the study to bring her father tea. She hadn't touched anything else. Her voice was steady, practiced from years of defending herself. She even remembered something important: the house security system. Her parents had installed cameras months earlier. Emily opened the app on her phone and showed them the timeline. Clear footage. She entered the study for 2 minutes. She left. Nothing else for a moment. She thought this time would be different. Her mother didn't even lean closer to look. She waved her hand and said, "Emily, please don't make this complicated. We're already stressed." Her father rubbed his forehead and said, "Ryan wouldn't lie about something like this." The room went silent. Emily stood there holding her phone proof glowing on the screen, feeling something inside her finally break, not loudly, not in anger, but with deep exhaustion. She realized in that moment that it didn't matter how clear the truth was. Her parents had already chosen their version of it. She didn't argue. She didn't raise her voice. She simply nodded and put her phone away. That night, Emily lay awake, listening to the rain tap against the windows. Her childhood replayed in quiet scenes, small moments she had brushed aside for years. Times she had been blamed, doubted, ignored. Times she had swallowed tears because crying would only make things worse. She understood something then that she had avoided for a long time. This wasn't about one watch. This was about a lifetime of being unseen. 2 days later, the truth surfaced on its own. Linda found the watch inside Ryan's gym bag while putting laundry away. She called everyone into the living room. Ryan laughed awkwardly and said he must have borrowed it and forgotten. He said it wasn't a big deal. His parents sighed with relief. The problem was solved. The house returned to normal. No one apologized to Emily. Her mother didn't say, "We should have believed you." Her father didn't say, "We were wrong." They acted as if nothing had happened at all. Emily smiled politely and said nothing. But inside her, a decision was forming, quiet, steady, and final. That evening, she packed her suitcase. She hugged her parents goodbye the next morning and drove back to her apartment. On the highway, with miles of road stretching ahead of her, Emily didn't feel angry. She felt clear. For the first time, she understood that waiting for her parents to change was slowly breaking her. She couldn't keep standing in rooms where her voice disappeared. Over the next few weeks, she thought deeply about her life, about who she was when she wasn't trying to earn love, about who she could become if she stopped explaining herself to people who had already decided not to listen. A job opportunity opened in Seattle, better pay, new challenges, a fresh start. Emily applied without telling anyone. When the offer came through, she accepted it with calm certainty. Telling her parents was brief and polite. Her mother was surprised. Her father asked why so suddenly. Emily said she needed a change. They didn't ask more questions. Maybe they assumed she would always come back. She didn't correct them. On her last night in Ohio, Emily stood alone in her childhood bedroom. The walls still held old photos, awards, and memories. She didn't feel sad. She felt lighter. She understood now that sometimes growth meant leaving without closure. As she turned off the light and closed the door, Emily made herself a promise. She would no longer fight to be believed. She would no longer measure her worth by her parents' approval. She would build a life where truth didn't have to shout to be heard. What she didn't know yet was that this choice, this quiet step away, would change everything. Not just her relationship with her family, but the way she loved, trusted, and allowed herself to be seen. And somewhere far from that Ohio house, a new chapter was already waiting for her to walk into it. Emily Miller had never felt lighter in her life. As the plane touched down in Seattle, she gripped her carry-on bag and looked out the window at the sprawling city, the skyline glittering with possibility. For the first time, she wasn't running from anyone. She was moving toward herself. The move was more than a change of scenery. It was a declaration. No more ignoring her worth. No more being invisible. No more explaining herself to people who refused to see her. Seattle promised a clean slate, and Emily intended to claim every inch of it. The apartment she rented was small but bright. A loft with big windows and enough space for a desk, a sofa, and a little nook she could call her reading corner. She unpacked quickly, letting the boxes sit half open as she paced the room, imagining the life she could create. For the first time in years, she wasn't adjusting herself to fit someone else's expectations. She was the priority, not the overlooked sibling from Ohio. Her first week at the marketing firm was a whirlwind of introductions, meetings, and deadlines. Emily threw herself into work, driven by a mix of nervous energy and the quiet determination that had carried her this far. That's when she noticed Daniel Harper, her project lead. Daniel was different from anyone she had met in her old town. He noticed details others missed, like how Emily flinched when someone interrupted her in a meeting, or how she apologized unnecessarily after asking a question. He didn't judge, he didn't lecture. He simply observed, patiently, like he understood that some people hide in plain sight and others don't even notice them. It started with small gestures. A coffee cup left on her desk, a check-in at the end of a long day, a shared laugh over a minor project hiccup. Emily found herself looking forward to seeing Daniel in the mornings. The easy camaraderie felt comforting, but it was something more than comfort. It was a safe space. It's a place where she could let her guard down without fear of being dismissed or misunderstood. One rainy afternoon, after a particularly stressful client call, Emily found herself walking with Daniel along the waterfront. The city lights reflected off the wet pavement, and the air smelled faintly of salt and rain. Emily found herself speaking before she could stop herself. She told Daniel about her childhood, the favoritism, the broken vase incident, the stolen watch, and the years of feeling unseen. Her words poured out, measured but raw. Daniel listened quietly, his expression calm and kind, never interrupting, never questioning the truth of her pain. "That must have been lonely," he said finally, his voice soft but firm. It wasn't pity, and it wasn't judgment. It was acknowledgement. Emily felt tears prick the corners of her eyes, but they didn't fall. For the first time, someone had heard her completely, without twisting her story, without taking sides. Months passed, and Emily settled into her new life. She made friends, explored the city, and thrived at work. Daniel remained a steady presence, sometimes a partner in problem solving, sometimes a quiet confidant. The connection between them deepened naturally, unforced, as they spent more time together outside the office. Dinner dates, walks by the bay, shared coffee on lazy Sunday mornings. It wasn't dramatic or flashy, it was gentle and real. Emily felt seen, respected, and even cherished in a way she hadn't known she needed. Meanwhile, back in Ohio, the Miller family remained oblivious to the change. They noticed Emily's absence but assumed she was busy with work. Ryan, now in his late 20s, had his own life, and her parents carried on with the illusion of normalcy. Emily had decided long ago that she didn't need their acknowledgement. She was building a life independent of their validation. Then came the invitation, Ryan's wedding. Emily hesitated. For a moment, the old pain tugged at her. Should she go? Could she face them without the old wounds reopening? She almost declined, but ultimately decided it was time. Not for reconciliation, not for confrontation, but for closure. She had grown beyond the need to be chosen, and attending the wedding felt like claiming her right to peace. The reception hall was buzzing with laughter, music, and well-dressed guests. Emily entered quietly, wearing a dress she loved and a calm confidence she hadn't felt in years. She smiled politely at family members, exchanged pleasantries, and found a seat near the back, far from the center of attention. Ryan, ever the charming groom, was surrounded by friends, his family doting on him as expected. During the speeches, Ryan stood at the microphone, laughing easily. He told a story about the incident from a few years ago, framing Emily as dramatic and overly sensitive. The room chuckled politely. Emily's stomach tightened. Old habits urged her to defend herself, to prove once again that she had been right all along. But she stayed seated, breathing deeply, reminding herself that she didn't need anyone to validate her anymore. When the laughter died down, Emily stood. Her parents' eyes followed her, puzzled. Ryan's smile faltered slightly. She didn't shout, didn't cry, didn't accuse. She spoke clearly, calmly, and with measured emotion. She recounted the pattern of favoritism, the years of being overlooked, the proof that had been ignored. She didn't point fingers. She simply told the truth in a way that left no room for dismissal. "I stopped fighting because I realized something," she said, her voice steady, carrying across the room. "I don't need to be chosen to be worthy. I don't need your approval to define my value. I've learned to see it myself." A silence fell over the room. Her mother's lips trembled, her father's eyes softened, and Ryan looked away. For the first time, her words weren't met with dismissal or doubt. They couldn't ignore her anymore. But Emily didn't gloat. She didn't seek revenge. She simply reclaimed her voice and walked away. Outside the reception, Daniel was waiting, holding an umbrella. Emily smiled, feeling a sense of calm she hadn't experienced in years. They walked together along the quiet streets, the city lights, reflecting on the wet pavement, their hands brushing, fingers eventually intertwining. Emily felt lighter than ever. She had spoken her truth, and she had survived. She had loved gently and found someone who saw her completely. The lessons of her past were no longer burdens. They were reminders of strength. Emily understood that. Some people will never see you the way you deserve to be seen, and some truths don't need validation to exist. What mattered was her own perception of her worth, and now, with Daniel beside her and her future open before her, Emily felt ready for anything. In the end, it wasn't about making her parents or brother realize their mistakes. It wasn't about changing their minds or forcing apologies. It was about realizing that her life, her love, and her happiness were hers to claim. And as she walked into the night with Daniel, Emily knew she had finally learned the most powerful lesson of all. Freedom comes not from being chosen, but from choosing yourself. The city stretched before her, full of possibilities, adventures, and quiet moments of joy. Emily felt the gentle thrill of living a life on her terms, guided by truth, love, and self-respect. And for the first time in her life, she wasn't just surviving, she was thriving. Her past no longer weighed her down. Parents' favoritism no longer defined her. She had discovered her own voice, her own love, and her own power. And that, Emily knew, was more than enough.